Yes, the question was about Candace Owens. I think her behavior during this is disgraceful. Without a doubt. I think she's been absolutely disgraceful.
I love the way that you.
So I just wanted to actually show you guys that clip from before and how we got to this moment. You know, that clip of Ben saying that about Candace, that was somewhere back in November of 2023. This is where this started to brew, at least out in the public eye. Obviously, there was something already in the kettle, you know what I mean, already boiling for it to get to the point of manifesting itself for people to see. And that's when I personally knew. I was like, they're not going to be able to last like this. They're not, because these two have different opinions on a subject matter that you can have different opinions on. But one of these two believes that you are morally wrong if you don't agree with them. So that's how we got here. But so now we have Ben Shapiro, who's doing this weird thing, like going to different podcasts and acting like he's not going to talk about Candace, but he is going to talk about Candace, but he's not going to talk about. So it's like, which one is it going to be? Are you talking about her? Or are you not talking about her?
One of the consequences of this war has been a lot of very high passions on both sides, a lot of angry disagreements. You and your company have been at the center of a very high profile one at the moment with Candace Owens, who's now left Daily Wire. Was she fired, or did she leave of her own volition?
I'm not going to speak to this topic, Piers.
At all?
At all.
So obviously right there, we know that Ben was never going to speak to that topic on Piers Morgan. I mean, Piers Morgan's not going to have Ben Shapiro there and not answer. And I could at least say for this clip, Ben keeps it real and he does not talk about Candace. He's going to go on to keep asking him, and he kind of, he stands his ground a bit.
You can't give me any insight into why she departed?
No hints, no nothing. I'm not going to speak to this.
Can I ask why?
But his mischievous smile, I'm sorry. Like sometimes, oh my God, these people, like I do have to laugh a little bit because like, look at that smile. Like it's just, what is it saying? You know, what is that smile saying? It's almost like he's like taunting it. Like, nope, I'm not saying nothing, but I know what it is. Like, oh my goodness.
I mean, you can ask.
No, I'm not. You can ask why you don't want to say anything.
Again, you can ask.
I'm only curious because I know what a staunch defender of free speech you are, and it would surprise me if it had been someone's opinions that would make you want to part company with them. However contentious.
I mean, suffice it to say, the only thing I will say is what I've said all along with regard to Candace or with regard to any of our other hosts. I am not in hiring and firing position with the Daily Wire. I'm a co-founder.
He always says that, but don't act like you don't have influence in what goes on in the Daily Wire. You're a co-founder. You're saying you're not in hiring and firing position, as in like you're not a manager, you're not in HR. Fine. But let us not pretend that you don't have the influence of who gets to stay and who gets to go, or even who gets to come in. That's a lie. And I mean, I can't prove it, obviously, like I'm allegedly in my opinion, right? But come on, if I had a company like that and we all know each other, we all know what's going on. Come on, Ben, we know that you at least have influence, but legally you can say that you're not in hiring and firing position. And the fact that was smart enough, you guys were smart. It was smart to take Ben out of that position because it would be a conflict of interest in the utmost. So that was a very smart move, but we're not dumb, you know?
Founder of the Daily Wire. I'm a co-owner of the Daily Wire. I'm not actually in management. Jeremy Boring and Caleb Robinson are in management positions with regard to Candace or anyone else. And as far as the free speech situation, what I will say is that no company has the obligation to literally pay anyone. The Daily Wire is a publisher. It is not a platform. I've never called for Candace or anyone else for that matter to be banned from YouTube, to be banned from X, to be banned from any platform. That's a different story. Obviously, when it comes to any publisher gets to make decisions about what it wishes to purvey and not.
I mean, I'm just not going to label.
And so that is a semantic argument. We don't have to pay you to say things that we don't like, to disagree, but we're going to, we're gonna get rid of you, but we're not gonna call for you to be taken off of Twitter or YouTube. So we're still fighting for free speech. Is that the fight for free speech? Is that how far it goes? Is that how compassionate it is to fight for free speech and say you could do that over there though? It's obvious what happened. It's not like Candace Owens was coming to work late,
But one more point I would make is it's been reported extensively that the reason for her departure was because her comments had been perceived by people at the Daily Wire as anti-Semitic.
Again, I'm not going to comment on this, Piers.
Okay.
Well, good job, Piers, and good job, Ben, for not commenting.
You repeatedly about Candace. All right, so let's do the elephant in the room for just a moment, because I saw you this week on Piers Morgan. He asked you repeatedly about Candace. You repeatedly basically said,
I won't talk about that.
Don't want to talk
I'll say
about
that
it.
here too.
Yeah, and that's fine. And it's interesting because we all sort of came up together to different extents, and we've all done a million things together in public events and networks and all of those things. It seems to me that at this moment, she's now a free agent. She happened to end up on Locals, which I created, and we're a platform, not a publisher that you guys.
So Dave Rubin is going to continuously push this Locals, which he created. We're a platform, not a publisher like you guys. I really thought that Daily Wire was a platform anyway, but Candace going on Dave Rubin's platform is really odd to me. And this whole thing she happened to end up on keeps making me feel like she didn't just happen to end up there. Dave Rubin's been predicting Candace's departure with the Daily Wire just as long as I have. So I personally think that he's kind of put his bid in, when it comes to Candace. I do. I have no way to prove it, but I just feel that way because he keeps doing this like, oh, Locals, it's my platform. It's my platform. Like, yeah, of course, that's what's up. It is your platform, right? But she just happened to end up there. It's just, I don't know, guys. Maybe I'm taking it a little too far. Please drop a comment below. Let me know if I'm saying too much or saying nothing.
Guys are. Can you at least talk to just sort of where it's at now? She's not with you. She's free.
She's free to do whatever she wants to do, to be wherever she wants to be. And the difference between a publisher like the Daily Wire and a platform like Locals is obviously that a platform should have a very broad range of speech that it allows, including speech that maybe even the creators don't believe is inside what they would consider to be the Overton window. It's a very different thing than direct subsidization of particular opinions. The Daily Wire would not have a host, would not pay a host who was staunchly pro-abortion.
Mm-hmm.
They'd have no.
So the thing is, though, that is very it's hypocrisy. That's hypocritical. So number one, to say that she had opinions, it undermines everything she was saying. In fact, she has facts to back up the things that she was saying. I mean, and she brought in a rabbi. I really kind of can't pinpoint which one it is. If it was the, foreign nation outside of here that gave them a problem that she had actual valid criticisms of, which you can criticize any country. We can criticize our own country. We can criticize China. We can criticize anywhere else. So nobody's beyond reproach. Also, was it the fact that she was questioning a certain group of people, but she also gave them the microphone to speak? There's a lot of speculation. But so we can't even pinpoint it. But to say it's opinion, it just undermines this argument that she put out.
Obligation to pay a host who is staunchly pro-abortion. And so when it comes to the hosts on the Daily Wire, obviously everyone is able to say what they want. Nobody ever comes to me and says, you can't say X. Nobody ever says that to Walsh. And no one ever said that to Candace. But the reality is that there is an Overton window at the Daily Wire. Obviously, there was a non-meeting of the minds. That's pretty much all I can say on this. And, a lot of this has happened publicly. But to the extent that the Daily Wire is in fact not a publisher, it is that is in fact not a platform, it is a publisher. That means that there is no moral obligation for the Daily, and there's no free speech problem with the Daily Wire saying we don't wish to pay a particular host, or that host saying I don't wish to work here anymore, because again, there's a parting of the ways that is not really open for discussion at this point.
Does it surprise you that so many people, even on our side of this, are confused about that as it relates to free speech and quote unquote cancel culture? Like severing a business tie.
Oh, listen, let me tell you something, all right, Dave? Like, y'all not even about to do this, okay? Do not take this high road. Like, they're just confused. Severing a business tie is what? It's not cancel culture. Like, it is, y'all. Look, you guys are human, right? You get involved in cancel culture. It's okay. You get involved in cancel culture. I mean, it's not okay because you've been roaring at the left about it for so long, how wrong it was when they do it. And it is wrong. But y'all do it too. And we see the threshold. And some of us are asking, I mean, again, I'm wondering really how deep this threshold goes. I mean, there was this whole scandal on Twitter, and it's actually still going on about Crisis King being an issue. So how far does this go?
As long as you're not throwing someone in jail, they're able to be everywhere else is not.
I'm not super
culture
surprised at the
per se,
controversy,
yeah.
honestly, because to a certain extent, I think that there's been a reaction on the right to the excesses of the left. So because what the left did is they said that the Overton window ought to be closed so tight that no one can get inside the Overton window. Basically, if you're to the right of Hillary Clinton, you can't be allowed inside
Welcome
the
to
Overton
my
window.
world,
Yes,
brother.
exactly. And not just with regard to platforms, but with regard to publishers. So, for example, this week, NBC News deciding that Ronna McDaniel was too much for them. Ronna
Right.
McDaniel can't work at NBC News. The sacred halls of NBC News must not be sullied by the former head of the RNC. Jen Psaki, however, can have a show on MSNBC despite being the press secretary for the White House 5 seconds ago. Right? The right's response to that is, I think, correct to say you guys have shut the Overton window too tight. But I think some elements of the right have basically said there is no Overton window. The Overton window should be completely exploded with regard not just to platforms, with which I kind of agree, but with regard to publishers. So NBC News not only has an obligation to hire Ronna McDaniel, NBC News has the obligation to hire Alex Jones, for example.
Right.
I
Which
don't think
just
that's
makes
true.
no sense at a business level beyond free speech. I mean,
Okay, so you know what? We're not gonna, you know what? Like, at a business level, you know what doesn't make sense at a business level is to fire Candace Owens when she was your top producer. And y'all all know that Candace was the top producer. Let's think about it. Okay, Ben was up there, but if I'm not mistaken, they say that Candace had more numbers than him. But you could tell culturally that she was. Not because like, oh, she's just some black woman talking. No, she talked about everything. I mean, she would talk about Kim Kardashian and stuff like that. And let me be clear. I'm not defending necessarily Candace Owens, right? Who I think maybe is on a growth journey because she's done some things in the past, especially with the Crowder situation, where I was like, yo, this girl jumps on too many grifts. And some of them I think aren't necessary. But I understand when you're building your name, you have to be scandalous. But there's some scandals that I just don't, when it comes to people's marriages and stuff. But I always gave her her credit. Like, Candace Owens was needed. She's still needed to raise awareness, to ask questions, to question people about their beliefs, subjective beliefs, right? So she was important for that. Not to mention, but when I was talking about her back in the day, like when I was like but one thing about her, she does bring on a platform is that she's talking about cultural stuff. Like she'll talk about the Kardashians, she'll talk about music stuff or whatever. And so I was like, people are interested in that kind of thing. And we should look at things at a conservative aspect or something, like just to have the discussions. Like, we can't just always be talking about the Constitution on these kind of shows. So I got it. I was like, I get it. It makes sense to step into that scene. But so you have a person like that, and she was only growing. She was only growing, getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then, mind you, they had a billboard with her, with Ben Shapiro standing on the billboard saying the uncancelable Candace. Meanwhile, y'all canceled her. It's not a good business decision to fire somebody at the peak of their rise, and they're on your platform or your publishing, whatever, business. You can make a lot of money from that. And they was just like, no, never mind. For what?
and there's a reason that networks exist. It
Right, they have
comprises a series,
editorial
yeah.
positions.
Yeah.
Daily Wire has a very strong editorial position on a wide variety of issues. And by the way, I should say that there are a lot of people who are suggesting this is about disagreements over Israel. I mean, I can safely say it is not about disagreements over Israel, to the extent that, without reference to Candace at all here, Matt Walsh has taken the position that America ought not be involved in the Middle East at all. Matt Walsh's position, so far as I understand it, and I've talked to him about it, is that Israel, in a conflict between Israel and Hamas, Israel is obviously a more moral party than the genocidal terrorist group Hamas, but also it's very far away. He doesn't care, and it doesn't involve America.
Let me tell you something. Well, then Ben just clarified exactly what the problem is, and I'm going to show you a leak. But at the same time, what Ben just does, what he does there, he throws all these words. The immoral, they're morally good. These are subjective arguments. They are. Now, and then so Candace made the point of, Ben, we agreed not to talk about this, but you are very much going on a public tour right now, pretending not to talk about it while you are very much talking about it. Would you like me to do the same? Of course, he didn't respond. And mind you, this was your homie about 2 years ago. It's just insane. But now, so there's this particular email leak, and she's saying she wasn't aware of. Maybe she should go on Joe Rogan and pretend not to talk about it. This is coming from Censored Men. Now, I can't say whether it's true or not, but I'm seeing other people report it, and they're saying that the employees, they had a call, like a town hall at the Daily Wire. This is apparently what happened. And that, and shout out to Censored Men who hit 1 million. So shout out to him anyway. So I just felt like I needed to, that's a lot of work. So anyway, and to talk about the whole Crisis King situation, and basically saying that that was the reason for her being, fired. And that there were whistleblowers from the Daily Wire who came and told this to the Censored Men, like bought evidence about this, showing the email. He redacted a lot of things. So they remain, of course, anonymous. Of course, I'm sure everybody's probably Monday morning is not going to be safe. Now, what they do is they had showed clips of Candace Owens' repeated use of Crisis King was deemed to be anti-Semitic. And then they said they merged them with like clips of Nick Fuentes doing the same thing. So it was just to kind of give you that feeling of like, oh, these are the tropes that she's doing, and it's some sort of slander. And I couldn't see how they could try to make a case for that, except for there's a lot of reaching that goes into that, and that's why it makes them look foolish. At the end of the day, this whole thing is just beyond. It's just ridiculous. I mean, there's just no other word for it. But people are still talking about it because it is shocking, because these were the fighters for free speech, right? Like, oh, we're fighting for your free speech to talk about transgenderism. And okay, cool. We talked about that, right? And so now when it comes to a war that is going on that we are very much implicated in, and maybe Americans need to know what's happening out, over there in the other country, because our tax dollars are being involved at least. They said that's enough. And they said it's not because of that. So is it because of the Crisis King thing? And that is even like, if that could be totally proven, wow, that says a lot. Ben Shapiro, I've heard him take credit for he said, well, it's because of me, a lot of Christians have gone back to church. No, it's never because of you, Ben. It's because of God. Okay. They just happen to hear something you said and God connected them, not you. So for this person to think that they are sending Christians back to church, yet they are feeling this way about Crisis King, it's kind of odd to me. It's more than odd. This is supposed to be a so-called conservative site. What is the conservatism based on? What is it based on? I mean, how long do we talk about transgenderism? I'm just saying. The conversation is we've kind of we have to evolve if we're trying to, quote, fix this country. But nobody is. They want the country to be the same way. So they want to monetize off of the detriment. And this is the, quote, conservative movement. This is the biggest name in the conservative movement. So there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of people who are now looking at this and wondering what's been going on, who's been really driving this movement, and is it worth it to stick around with the Daily Wire?